Eventually, oxygen produced by cyanobacteria began to build up in the atmosphere. Slowly but surely, this transformed the planet. Over the next 8 hours or so, tiny microbes raised the level of oxygen from less than 1% to today's 21%. The time was about 9 p.m. It's amazing to contemplate, but without cyanobacteria, there would be no oxygen, and Earth would still be smothered in noxious gases. Plants, animals, and humans would have never evolved.
We're sitting here today breathing an oxygen-rich mixture of air. We couldn't be here without that oxygen, but that oxygen wasn't present on the early Earth, and it only became present because of the activity of photosynthetic organisms.
Life has made this environment what we know. It's allowed us to live on the surface. It allows us to breathe. It allows large organisms like we are to function at very high rates of activity.
The oxygen also helped protect life from the sun's lethal ultraviolet radiation by creating a layer of ozone in the upper atmosphere.
One of the fascinating properties of that is that it actually screens out, just sort of like a sunscreen does on your skin, screens out this harmful radiation.
With the protection of the ozone layer, life was able to diversify into more complex organisms. It took only the last 3 hours of the day for all other life forms on our planet to evolve. The first multicellular life emerged at 6 minutes past 9 in the evening. Then came fish and insects and reptiles. By about 10 minutes to 11 in the evening, dinosaurs roamed the earth. The first primates appeared at 20 to midnight. And with less than 30 seconds to go, the first humans made their appearance.
It's only been the last 10% of the Earth's history where there was life on the surface of the Earth that you would see with your naked eye. So for most of Earth's history, life has basically been invisible on the Earth.
Over 1 billion or 2 billion years, the amount of oxygen that these little creatures produced was enough to actually change the entire atmosphere of the planet.
Multicellular life that we're most familiar with, animals, plants, their environment was made possible by the slow, toilsome task of bacteria to oxygenate the atmosphere.
Microbes ruled the Earth for more than 3 billion years, 2/3 of its history. These tiny organisms had transformed an entire planet. Without them, complex life, humans included, would have never evolved.
I was in Texas with my colleague Antonio Lascano, who was also a good friend of Stanley's, and we were preparing to give a couple back-to-back lectures, and we were looking at each other's slides, and Antonio just sort of mentioned to me, he says, well, Stanley showed me a vial of stuff that he said he'd saved from his original experiment. And I said, you're kidding me. I said, he never mentioned this to me. And he goes, well, he just sort of showed it casually and put it back in the box. I said, well, where is that box? He says, well, I don't know. It was in his office. Well, all of a sudden I realized I'd inherited everything that was in his lab and office. And so when I got back to my lab, we started looking around, and here we found these old cardboard boxes marked 1953, 1954 experiments. And we started opening them, and in that we found extracts from each of the 3 experiments, including this one that we called the volcanic apparatus. And all of a sudden I realized here we had the original samples in our hands, that we could now reinvestigate that experiment using modern analytical methods that Stanley did not have at his disposal at the time. And what we found was indeed the volcanic apparatus not only produced a richer mixture of amino acids, but many of the amino acids are ones that had never been detected previously in a simulated earlier synthesis experiment. So it was really revolutionary.